Welcome to the December 17th, 2025 Historical Affairs and Mark Review Board. Effective July 1st, 2024, updated state legislation continues to require certain county board appointed commissions, including the HALRB, to have an in-person forum to conduct its monthly business. HALRB hearings are provided in a hybrid environment, both in person and streamed online. Members of the public may attend and participate either virtually or in person. For members of the board joining us virtually this evening, please join us via the Microsoft Teams link. Please keep your device muted until you would like to speak, but ensure your video is turned on and you are visible during the entire meeting. For members of the public joining us this evening, today's meeting is available to stream from the county website via Microsoft Teams link. There is also a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. Please keep your device muted and video turned off until you are called on to speak. For public speakers who have pre-registered, please wait until you are called on to speak. For those who have not pre-registered, requests for public speaking can still be submitted. Staff will do their best to accommodate those requests. However, we cannot guarantee that they will be met. Speaker slips are available at the front of the room for in-person speakers who have not pre-registered. Public comment is only allowed for items advertised on the HALRB's agenda. The ability to sign up to speak will no longer be available after the HALRB chair has stated that public testimony. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. Meeting chat should not be used for discussion, written comments, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. You may use the chat for technical assistance. All voting will be done by a call of the roll. Lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted on the county website and the County Commission meeting YouTube page. Avoid sharing any personal information that you would not like to be made public. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. Okay. Oh, now it's all right. Let's please call the roll.
Nathan Burlingame.
Here.
Robert Duncan.
Here.
Andrew Fackler.
Here.
Alex Foster. Here. Jerry Laporte.
Here.
Joan Lawrence.
Here.
Rebecca Meyer. Here. Katie Myers.
Here.
Here. Andy Winchell. He might be attending virtually, but he's not here yet. And Dick Woodruff.
Here.
Have a
Sorry, I skipped something. Okay, first order of business is we're going to approve the November minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the November minutes? Now, can I have a motion to approve?
I move we approve the November minutes.
Yep. Second. Robert seconding and eating his cookie. Okay, please call the roll.
Nathan Burlingame.
Yes.
Robert Duncan.
Yes.
Andrew Fackler.
Yes.
Alex Foster. Jerry Laporte.
Yes.
Joan Lawrence.
Yes.
Rebecca Meyer. Abstain. Katie Myers.
Yes.
And Dick Woodruff.
Yes.
Okay.
Minutes are approved. Sorry, minutes are approved.
Okay, we're going to move on to the public hearings for the certificates of appropriateness. First, we have Brian Davis. Staff is going to. Yes. This is for COA 2509, 2165 North Lincoln Street.
So the house at 2165 North Lincoln Street was constructed in 1953 and is considered non-contributing to the Maywood National Register Historic District. Over the years, a few projects have been reviewed and approved by HPP staff and the HALRB, including an approval for the construction of a 2-story rear addition, the construction of a new rear deck, various landscape and hardscape improvements. The applicant is proposing to construct an accessory dwelling unit, or an ADU, in the rear yard. To accommodate the ADU, the applicant will remove a gravel area with steps, which the applicants use as a patio, a stone wall, a stone walkway, and 3 garden areas with fencing. The proposed 1.5-story ADU will be 490 square feet and feature a rectangular floor plan with a side gable roof. At the center of the roof on both the west, which is the front, and east rear elevations, is a shed dormer featuring 3 sets of windows. Other fenestration includes aluminum clad casement windows, diamond windows in the gable ends, and vinyl clad or aluminum clad French doors. Other proposed materials include hardy plank siding, PVC trim, and architectural asphalt shingles. A mini split system will be situated along the rear elevation of the ADU. So the Design Review Committee, or DRC, DRC considered this application at their December meeting. The main topic of conversation was that of the proposed dormer design. In the application that was presented at the DRC meeting, the original design included a dormer design that the DRC felt was atypical for Maywood. They suggested that the applicants consider amending the dormer design. The applicant expressed that they would need to think about this a little bit further. So the DRC suggested that they come back in January. After the meeting, the applicant decided that they would move forward with that request from the DRC to make that change. So staff placed it on the discussion agenda for tonight's meeting. HPP staff recommend approval of the subject application as submitted. The HALRB has previously approved ADUs in Maywood in the past. In the past few years, the HALRB has approved 4 ADU projects as well as an accessory building project. The ADU will not be highly visible from the public right-of-way, and the proposed location allows for it to be secondary to the primary dwelling, which complies with the Maywood design guidelines. Furthermore, the proposed design is compatible with the architectural context of the district. Staff appreciate the applicant's revisions to the dormer design as well. So regarding the materials proposed, most are considered appropriate for Maywood. The hardy plank siding, PVC trim, and architectural asphalt shingles all comply with the design guidelines. However, aluminum clad windows and vinyl clad doors are not considered appropriate for the district per Chapter 5 of the Maywood design guidelines. In the past, the HALRB has permitted the use of non-historic materials on ADUs, particularly with regards to fenestration. For comparison, the proposed ADU at 3504 21st Avenue North was approved with vinyl clad windows and wood doors. The ADU at 2314 North Kenmore Street has wood windows and doors, and the ADU at 3310 21st Avenue North has aluminum clad windows and doors. Another ADU has vinyl clad windows, aluminum windows, and aluminum clad doors. So there is a mixture. The HALRB approved the use of these materials in these specific cases because the ADU was a secondary building, because it was not visible from the street, and because the ADU had a vernacular style that matched the historic district. Staff find that the proposed ADU at 2165 North Lincoln would have limited visibility from the street. It would be a secondary building, and it would have a vernacular style that matches the historic district. So it's for those reasons that staff find the application appropriate. And that concludes staff's presentation. And that is this is the site plan, the primary residence. This is where the ADU would be located. This is the front of the ADU. Side elevations. Rear. And then some fenestration details. These are all the materials. I'm going to skip through these. You all received this ahead of time. But the photographs show where the house is located in relation to where the ADU will be located. So the yard is sloped. These are the areas that would be going away to make space for this ADU. And that concludes that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and I understand Ryan Davis is here, and is Rob here as well?
Rob is not.
Okay, it's your turn to speak. Please share any thoughts.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Can I ask him to come to the table?
Yeah,
Sure.
can you slide? You can either join us down there, or you could slide a chair.
Thank you for the opportunity to present. and Thank you for the consideration of the recommendation. The ADU is, you'll see on our property, the ADU sits at the very back of the property, so it's not highly visible from the street. It is a building that we have, my wife and I, our family lives on the West Coast, so it's a building that we intend to use when our family comes out to visit. We also have young children, well, not young anymore, they're in their 20s, but we're hoping that they don't end up in our ADU, but that's a possibility as we we've made the changes that we were recommended to make by the DRC. We think it's appropriate for the neighborhood. We don't think it's, again, highly visible. But I welcome any questions any member of the board has.
And Robert, does the DRC?
Yeah, we completely concur with the staff report. Basically, the discussion that was at the DRC, we appreciate the taking the DRC recommendations. I think it's made it more compatible with Maywood. We thought it was a very nice structure and a good addition to Maywood. The only issue, which is the issue of the non-conforming materials, but staff has indicated that on other ADUs we have approved such materials. So if that's the case, that's something for the board to consider. But DRC wholeheartedly endorsed the project.
Andy online.
He did join online, I'm pretty sure.
Andy, do you have anything to add as a member of the DRC? Oh,
He did join.
okay. All right. And we have no public comments or speakers. So I'm going to open it up for the HLRB discussion. Does anyone have any comments?
As the one person in the neighborhood who, on this board who'd be directly impacted by it, I support it.
You're right behind.
Next door.
Or next door. Okay.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, there are no further comments. I'm going to move that the HLRB approve COA 25-09 at 2165 North Lincoln Street in the Maywood Local Historic District to allow the construction of an accessory dwelling unit as shown in the submitted plans, because the ADU incorporates a vernacular style that matches the styles in the Maywood Local Historic District and remains secondary to the primary dwelling, which complies with the Maywood design guidelines. Additionally, the use of modern materials is acceptable for this ADU because it is not highly visible from the public right of way.
I'll second.
Call the roll.
Okay, please respond yes if you support the motion. Nathan Burlingame,
Yes.
Mara Davis,
Yes.
Robert Dutka,
Yes.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster. Yes. Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lauren,
Yes.
Becca Meyer. Yes. Katie Myers,
Yes.
Dick Woodruff.
Yes.
Just to confirm, Andy is not joined online. Okay. The motion carries.
Okay. All right, so motion passed and they will follow up with,
I will
Thank you.
email
Okay,
thank
great.
you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
You get by me over.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll send our kids over when they come.
Okay, we are going to move on to the second discussion agenda item, COA 24-13A at 2904 22nd Street North. And we're going to start with the staff presentation.
Okay. So the pre-1923 dwelling at 2904 22nd Street North is a contributing resource to the Maywood National Register Historic District. Over the years, various COA and ACOA projects have been reviewed and approved for this property, but the most pertinent for tonight's discussion is COA 24-13. On May 15th, 2024, the HALRB approved plans for the reconstruction of the existing roof with a new truss system, which necessitated the increase of the overall height of the house by about 1 foot, the construction of a new dormer on the west elevation, the installation of aluminum clad wood windows in the dormers, and the replacement of the entire front entryway with a replica. The project being discussed tonight is a retroactive amendment to that project. So to aid with the discussion tonight, given that this is a retroactive request, I am going to provide next a timeline of events as it relates to this project. So on September 24th, 2024, the county's Inspection Services Division, or ISD for short, approved permit RADD 24-03314 in Permit Arlington, which incorporated the same designs as those approved under COA 2413. Between July 2024 and July 2025, Historic Preservation Inspector John McNair conducted regular weekly inspections throughout Maywood and visited the project site 2 to 3 times to monitor progress on the approved COA. The property was an active construction site, and the work on the roof exposed the rafters and trusses for a good portion of the project. This, along with the vantage point on the ground, caused it to be challenging to see any deviations from the approved COA. On May 9th, 2025, a building inspector with ISD conducted and approved the final inspection of the property for compliance with the state building code. On August 7th, 2025, architect Vin Tran informed Michael Durack that the house repairs had been completed. However, during the final inspection on August 13th, 2025, Mr. McNair identified a discrepancy in the dormer design. He immediately notified the HPP and reached out to Mr. Tran for clarification. On August 15th, 2025, Mr. Tran acknowledged the request and stated that he was working with the contractor to provide a response. It is typical for HPP staff to coordinate primarily with the architect or contractor of a project, especially if they are the individual who applied for the COA and for all building permits and not the homeowner at that point in the process. On September 3rd, 2025, Mr. Tran emailed Mr. McNair and myself a document which explained the project changes. Although the explanation was detailed, it did not clarify why the final design differed from both sets of approved plans. Following this, Mr. McNair coordinated with ISD, who managed review for building permits, and ultimately conduct the final building inspection and zoning to review the steps taken toward approving the building permit. The county concluded that the completed project did not match the plans submitted for the building permit, nor did it align with the approved COA 2413. As a result, on October 22nd, 2025, HPP staff requested that Mr. Tran apply for a retroactive COA and attend the November DRC meeting. At the November 5th, 2025 DRC meeting, the DRC concluded that the project as built did not comply with the Maywood design guidelines. Therefore, they provided guidance to Ms. Toole, the homeowner, and Mr. Tran about how to alter the design of the dormers so that it would comply and be appropriate for the LHD. Further details about this conversation and that at the DRC meeting in December will be provided shortly. Throughout this process, Ms. Ferris has had conversations with ISD, zoning, and the county attorney's office, to which all divisions agreed that the plans submitted for the building permit and the COA did not match what was built. No violation has been issued to the property owner at this time or their project team, as they've been responsive to staff's requests and have provided amended plans for consideration. So tonight, the applicant is bringing forward 2 proposals before the HALRB for consideration. Both are for the retroactive redesign of the roof that was previously reviewed and approved by the HALRB via COA 24-13 in May of 2024. So the first design, design number 1, is what we're referring to it as, which is the dormers as currently built. So as noted earlier, COA 2413 was not constructed as approved. Instead, changes to both the overall roof height and the dormers were made. The applicant is requesting that the HALRB consider reviewing and approving what was constructed, not in compliance with the original COA. The applicant reconstructed the roof and installed a new truss system to accommodate the use of the upstairs. As approved with COA 2413, the applicant constructed a new dormer on the west elevation and reconstructed the dormers on the north and east elevations. However, the overall height of the roof and the design and size of the dormers differs from what was originally approved. Instead of the roof having a height of 10 feet and 5 inches, the roof now has a height of 11 feet and 1.5 inches. This makes the roof 8.5 inches taller than originally proposed. Regarding the dormers, originally they were approved to have a height of less than 8 feet and 8.5 inches. However, the new dormers have a height of 9 feet and 5 inches, which makes the dormers 9 inches taller than originally proposed. Additionally, the ridge line of the dormers, as built, meets the ridge line and peak of the main roof, which was not the design of the approved COA. Instead, the ridge line of the dormers should have been located below the ridge line of the roof, not flush with it. The dormers were built with a gable roof, which was approved in COA 2413. So this is the current proposal with some photographs of the interior, measurements taken from the dormers. This was what the house originally looked like. And the row right here is what is currently built. This was the original design of the home. This is what is being considered. This is the details of the truss system on the inside. And this is what it looks like today. So for the second proposal that you all are considering this evening is the revision of the dormers. The revision would retain the existing roof height of 11 feet and 1.5 inches, which again is 8.5 inches taller than what was originally approved. However, changes would be made to the 3 dormers. All 3 would be redesigned to have a hipped roof rather than the existing front gable roof. They would also decrease in height. The dormers would measure 8 feet and 6.5 inches in height overall, which would make the dormers 10.5 inches shorter than what was constructed. Additionally, the dormers would no longer be flush with the ridge line of the main roof. The windows and the dormers would remain the same. And then to accommodate these changes to the dormers, portions of the existing truss system would also need to be altered. This is the amended design here, again, in the middle row. This over here is a holdover from their original plans with the front doorway. So that's why there's a massive X on the page, just to make sure there's no confusion. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, the DRC first considered this project at the November 2025 meeting. At the time, the DRC were only considering the as-built design, and they were unanimous in their lack of support for the as-built project. Specifically, all DRC commissioners expressed that the size of the dormers was not appropriate for Maywood because it made the dormers the main feature on the roof rather than subservient to the roof itself. They also expressed that the dormers were too modern and that they did not have the, right scale for the rest of the house. Finally, they were frustrated that what had been built went against what had previously been approved by the HALRB. There was a discussion about how headroom constraints and insulation requirements necessitated changes to the design of the roof. Mr. Dudker requested that this be explained further by the project team, since it did not appear to the DRC at the time that those changes necessitated that the dormers be built so large. There was also a discussion about the permitting related to this project. Ms. Durack noted that what drawings had been approved by the county permitting office matched what was approved by the HALRB. However, she noted that this was not what was built. The applicant noted that a county building inspector had come out to the site and found that the project complied with the building code. Ms. Durack noted that she would look into that further, but reiterated that the issue at hand remained. What was built was not what was approved by the HALRB. So the DRC at the time stated that they would not support the project or to move forward to the HALRB and that they would not be able to recommend approval. Instead, they suggested that the applicants return to the DRC with an updated design. They requested that the revisions reduce the visual impact of the dormers on the rest of the roof and or to reduce the literal size of the dormers. They suggested that making the dormer roof have either a jerkin head or hipped roof may help achieve this goal without having to compromise headroom on the interior. The project did not move forward to the November HALRB meeting. So then the DRC next considered the project at the December meeting. And then it was at this meeting that the DRC considered the amendments made by the project team. Mr. Wenchel and Mr. Dudka both felt that the changes made to the project, a decrease in height of the dormers and a change in the roof of the dormers from gable to hipped were appropriate and conformed with the Maywood design guidelines and the suggestions that were made by the DRC at the November meeting. It was for these reasons that they placed the project on the consent agenda for the December meeting, HALRB meeting. After the meeting, the homeowner, Ms. Leslie Jewell, expressed that she wanted her project on the discussion agenda and that she wanted the HALRB to consider the as-built proposal as well as the amended design. HPP staff placed the item on the discussion agenda for tonight's meeting for this reason. So we have two recommendations for the project since there are two separate designs that are being considered by you all this evening. So I'm going to start with the first design number one, which is the as constructed design. Staff does not recommend approval of this iteration of the roof design. The design as constructed does not comply with the originally approved COA 2413. Specifically, staff finds that the new dormer design is inappropriate for the Maywood Local Historic District. Although the roof height is 8.5 inches taller than what was originally proposed, this change in height is not largely discernible from the public right-of-way. There is also precedent in Maywood for modest height alterations to accommodate livable spaces. However, the design of the dormers overwhelms the house and has become the visually dominant feature of the roof. The scale of changes to historic houses in Maywood is one of the most important elements that contribute to the overall architectural character of the neighborhood. The relative scale of the new dormers is out of proportion with the historic house. The change in overall height of the dormers by 9 feet and 5 inches is visually discernible and contributes to this change in scale. Furthermore, the Maywood design guidelines state that because of the dormer's importance in helping define the character of the neighborhood, their original design should be maintained. Although the originally approved proposal included a change in roof type, it was found to be appropriate and acceptable to accommodate the new truss change in roof type. It was to accommodate the new truss system. The original proposal was found to not have a visual impact on the streetscape in Maywood. However, the dormers as built both have a visual impact on the streetscape and do not complement the house's four square form because they overwhelm the house in their scale and massing. Finally, staff find that the constructed design does not comply with standard number 9 of the Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. So for our recommendation for the second design, which is the dormers as revised, we do recommend approval of that iteration of the roof design. Although this design is different from what was originally approved with COA 2413, we do find that it is the best solution for the situation at hand, and it incorporates recommendations that were made by the DRC during the November meeting. With this design, the as constructed roof height would remain the same, but as I noted earlier, staff find that that change in height is not largely discernible from the right-of-way. The change in roof type on the dormers from front gable to hipped provides all three with a more appropriate scale and massing relative to the historic house. Furthermore, the new roof type, hipped, is appropriate per the guidelines and matches the original dormers on the house, which also had a hipped roof. The decrease in overall height of the dormers by 10.5 inches would also ensure that the dormers will no longer be the dominant feature on the roof. The adjusted size would allow the dormers to be proportionate in scale to the rest of the historic house, which complies with both the Maywood design guidelines and standard 9 of the Secretary of Interior Standards. So in conclusion, staff believe that the HALRB should consider this evening which of the two presented designs is most compatible and appropriate for the Maywood LHD. The retention of the currently constructed design would have the potential to be a precedent-setting decision for the neighborhood, especially considering that this is a retroactive project in nature. So that concludes staff's presentation. We do have some additional photographs on the screen. You can see the original house and then compared to the new design as built. And then just for comparison, I can come back to this or any of the other slides we looked at. You have the original design up top, the originally approved design in COA 2413, currently built design, and then the amended design, which are, both of those are under consideration this evening.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Leslie Jewell, the owner, is here, and it's your turn to speak. If you guys want to maybe join us up there, I know, Ben Tran is here as well. You guys want to join us at the table?
Can you post my photos that I emailed to you?
Sure.
I would really appreciate that. Hello, thanks for having us here today. I'm the homeowner and I'm here. Ben Tron is my architect and Mike has been my builder and contractor for the last 2 years. So I'm Leslie Jewell. I've owned in Maywood since '09, and I've come to the historic board many times to replace windows, to get a fence, to replace my roof. And this time I'm coming to you not out of wanting to do some changes to my house. I had catastrophic damage to my house. So I want to start with that. In July of 2023, a huge windstorm knocked a tree onto my house, another house across the street, and tore up trees throughout the park in Maywood. And in all my years of being a homeowner, I've never seen such catastrophic damage. My over $400,000 in terms of repairs. So the dormers is this very small part of a huge project that I've been trying to grapple with for the last 2 years. I had to fire a contractor. There's been things that I never wanted to have to do that I've had to do. So I'm coming to you today for some sympathy. And I have all my neighbors, my contiguous neighbors, and Michael has all the emails. I don't know if they've been distributed.
They were.
But I even have 2 or 3 more that came in after I gave the emails to Michael. But basically, it's all of my contiguous neighbors have written statements. They don't have problems with the dormers as they're constructed. I know they're not architects, but we all chose to be in a historic neighborhood because we like the character of the neighborhood. And they don't have a problem with them and I don't. And many people in my neighborhood have said the same thing walking by my house. They never would know. And I wanted to show, this is the photo. Thank you so much for pulling that up. So this is my neighbor, Susie McIntyre, and she's lived in the neighborhood since the 80s. We're dear friends. And it shows some scale there. So when Historic Board shows you my house, it just looks like my house is there with the dormers and but here you get to see her house is higher than my house. Her attic window is higher than my attic window on the side where my new dormer is. So in terms of sense of scale, and you can see both of these, her house has the gable, and both of the houses I gave Michael, the houses across the street from me, they both have the same gable roof. So it mirrors the architectural style of, maybe you don't think the dormers are of that same gable, but they all have that same style. And you can see the height where it was similar on my house and my neighbor's house. The other thing about this project is that I did pop the champagne cork with my friends here in May when the county guy said your permit's been approved, Leslie Jewell, you can move back into your house. I was like, yippee, because I've been living like a nomad for 2 years. And so I guess there's something in the report that I think is incorrect, which it's another reason I'm kind of upset with the counties, the way that this was handled, is we finished all the exterior work actually at the end of 2024. And between January and May, we did all the interior work. We did the mechanical, the electric. He got gorgeous historic trim for my baseboards. He went out and got wood for new, beautiful wood features in my historic house. This took time, but we finished the exterior work in December of 2024. So driving by in January, all the siding was up, everything was up. So the fact that you would wait from January until August, and I would have an approved permit in May, really seems unjust. I moved back into the house thinking everything was clear. And then I know Michael said that policy is to go first to the architect, but I was the homeowner and I was living in the house, and here you're bringing up a big issue and I'm not CC'd or included on emails, and I've moved back into my house. So I felt kind of ignored. I think given the scope of the project, it's why it kind of got away from me. There's so many things. When you have all 3 levels of your house destroyed by a huge oak tree with almost $500,000 worth of repairs, this got by me. I didn't get that this was not, that it was 8 inches higher and that it was 9 inches up on the peak line. I'm not out there with my ruler on the roof line, and it's a huge project. So, I love the historic nature of our neighborhood, and I'm only asking you to let me retain this because I do think that you have to balance me tearing off 3/4 of my roof. I've been out for 2 years. I'm taking off 1/4 of my roof for something that I feel like I didn't choose something crazy modern. It still is within this of a historic type of dormer, even though it might not be perfect architecturally. So I'm asking you as a homeowner who never wanted this to happen, who spent a whole lot of money, because insurance never covers everything. So, yeah, before I came to you guys, I fought insurance for like 6 or 9 months for some more money because there was so much damage. This is my plea to you, is to please consider all the things I just told you about my story. And, when I came in 2014, I came wanting to make those changes. It just isn't what actually happened in the field, and I apologize for that. But I'm asking you now that I'm in this place, if we can move forward with the dormers as they're constructed.
Thank you, Leslie. Does Ben or Mike want to add anything?
We've been through this whole process with her since the beginning. I tried to do my best to match and everything, but there's a lot of contingency. Brand new structure that was built, how old it was to get the structural stuff to work. And at the very beginning of this, we had a lot of issues with trying to form the structure with the open space inside to make it livable. The idea is livable, right? And the matches code and everything, the insulation and everything. So we had contingency of 24-inch trusses that we had to do to get their installation to even be livable space. Adjusting the height and all that, that's why the dormer came to a certain height. It wasn't because we wanted it to be taller than it was. We had to facilitate our living space, make it work. And at the end of the day, we consider a lot of part of it, and we built it as it was. And during the whole process, work back and forth. A lot of this was, at first I didn't even want to take the job because it was historic. And I was introduced
It's
to Leslie
complicated.
and try to do it minimum cost or something to just get back into a home, basically.
Okay. Did the DRC before? Okay. The DRC,
Yeah.
any comments?
I think staff did a very good job in summarizing the discussion that happened at both DRC meetings, but I wanted to make a few notes to that. One thing was it wasn't, we made clear at the first meeting as well as the second meeting that we are an advisory committee to the full board. We are the design professionals who look at it and then make recommendations to the full board. And we made clear from the first meeting that it was always their option to come before the full board. Even at the first meeting, that it wasn't, if they'd chosen not to come back with any changes to the second DRC meeting, they were free to come to the full board and plead their case as they have to. The second thing is that DRC actually spent a fair amount of time discussing how to make changes, and we tend to, and I think the full board also tends to do this, is we try to work with the applicant to make sure that whatever changes are made are the minimum that needs to be made in order to bring it into compliance. We're not trying to make it perfect. We're trying to make it something that is appropriate for the structure itself and Maywood as a whole. And so we did make an effort to make recommendations that would be the minimum that would be required to change the structure so that could happen. And that is what we recommended. The change to the hip roofs on the dormers, which would bring it into compliance, is only from above the windows on the dormers. It only involves the dormers themselves. It's not 3/4 of the roof. It's just the roofs, the top part of the dormers themselves, the 3 dormers. And so, and we felt that was a change that was sufficient to bring it into compliance. We didn't ask that it be brought to the original approved drawings. We worked with the applicant to see if there was a way that something reasonable could be done to bring it into compliance. And so that's, and they came back the second time with the proposal that you see tonight. And then we also offered by recommendation of staff to put it on consent, basically, so to say, okay, if you're willing to bring it into compliance, then we can all move forward quickly on this. We also offered that there should be that the county should be consulted as to whether the house could have partial occupancy. It's done all the time. People live in the house while roof work is being done. So it didn't seem like there was any reason why occupancy wouldn't be allowed while modifications were made. And so for all of those reasons, we thought if they're willing to make the changes, then we're willing to endorse it on the consent calendar. And if not, then it has to come to the full board, which is where we are tonight.
Thank you, Robert. Does anyone else on the DRC want to chime in right now? Andy? All right. Okay, we do have one public speaker online, Joe Lerner. If you can unmute yourself and show your video, hopefully. And you have 3 minutes from.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Very exciting. I won't take long at all. I live directly across the street from Leslie. There's literally no one in the world who sees Leslie House more often than I do. That being said, I'm not at all an expert in historic architecture. I've lived in Maywood for more than 36 years in the same place. So this whole thing surprises me, but I know, now that I have a little better understanding of what all went on, and I appreciate how everybody feels about that. I will just say, to me, like I said, who sees it more than anybody on the planet, the deviation from what was expected and what happened is not discernible. And I think it looks great. Again, not claiming to be any expertise there. But just one other thing, like Leslie didn't mention that my other neighbor, during the same storm that her house got wrecked, my other neighbor's house got wrecked also. So our little part of Maywood has seen a whole lot of construction traffic for the last year. And I got to tell you, me, possibly, maybe Leslie more, really happy that we saw the light at the end of that tunnel. So I got to tell you, I'd be pretty unhappy if we started seeing more trucks taking up our little tiny street and having nails in the street and getting flat tires and all that starting up again. So I think I've told you where I stand. That's all I got.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, and we, no more public speakers. But We had some public comments submitted. Are you guys going to summarize those?
Not summarized, but I wanted to just state for the record that those were shared with the HALRB via email, and they will be included in the minutes for this month's meeting, including the documents that you shared, Leslie. So those will be an addendum to the minutes, so they're part of the record as well.
There's some really intelligent comments from my neighbors who have gone to historic before. And just about balancing, I know it's not taking off the entire roof. Robert's actually right about that, but taking off 3 dormer tops is $30,000. So it's not an insignificant amount of money. And so balancing that with the historic, I understand that that's your job, but I would ask you to consider that my neighbors and there were some very beautiful comments from people who have done historic work on their house. And also commented on the nature of the dormers not being out of place as they would consider it walking by every day with their dog or their toddler. So I'd encourage you to read the emails, please.
Thank you, Leslie. And I did read those emails, sure. Okay. And now that we are done with our public testimony period. And we're going to start the discussion of the board. So I'll open it up to.
Okay. Thank you. I thought a lot about this, as many of you may know, in the last couple of weeks. And so I'm going to take a couple of minutes to appreciate forbearance. And let me begin by thanking the staff, first of all, for setting this up so we could have choice tonight over the 2 options and not just the discussion pertaining to the most recent plan. And I think that's fair. It's a fair way to go about it. I read the staff report very closely and carefully, and I was taken by the conclusion where, and I'm going to quote the first sentence, says that the HLRB should consider which of the 2 presented designs is most compatible and appropriate for the Maywood Local Historic District. And I think that's a really important point, because I think what we need to do is step this back a little bit and look at the Maywood Historic District and what it is and what it has become over the last 35 years that it's been an historic district. And what it has become is it hasn't changed that much. It's a neighborhood that's remained the same, unlike other neighborhoods that were built in the same period in Arlington, like Ashton Heights or Lion Park or Lion Village or Cherrydale. Maywood retains its essential character. And the reason for that is because the neighborhood supports the local historic district. Last 35 years, and I know this because I've lived there for 35 years, last 35 years, we've seen hundreds of projects approved, COAs approved, for little projects, small additions, major additions, actual new construction have all gotten done. And it's gotten done in a way that's preserved the character of the neighborhood. And that's built trust. And this whole system where the neighborhood works with the staff, works with the board, requires trust between all of us and the way this process works. And what happened with this project, there was a breakdown somewhere. And nobody really knows quite what happened. And I don't want to point the finger at anybody, at the architect or the builder or the staff, not you, certainly not you or any other staff at Arlington, but there was a disconnect that somehow left the builder and the architect thinking that they could alter this project on their own. And that's what happened. And I don't think the homeowner, Leslie, knew anything about it. I don't think she had any idea that this project wasn't being built to spec. And so as she said, it got approved, it got permitted, she moved back in, she had a party after 2 years of being out, and lo and behold, 4 or 5 months later, she learns that it's out of spec and that she's faced with the possibility of having to spend another $30,000 to rebuild those dormers. Now, nobody in Maywood cares about those dormers. They think it's fine. And this whole question is bigger than one house. That's one house in Maywood out of 100 houses and 100 families, at least 100 houses, that have interacted and been part of this process. And we need to think about, you know, what people's attitudes are going to be toward the historic district if we really crack down hard on this one homeowner and make her redo this dormer. And I don't think we should. And that's also the kind of news that gets out to other neighborhoods. And you know, there's a reason why people in Ashton Heights, Lion Village, Lion Park, Cherrydale haven't decided to make their neighborhoods historic districts, because they don't want the government telling them what to do. And you know what? The people in Maywood, when they bought their houses, or before the historic district, or you know, when the historic district was created, they gave up a basket of rights in return for protection of their houses and protection of the quality of the neighborhood. They did not agree to a very arch and strict interpretation of every single architectural standard. Now, I know we have guidelines, and the guidelines were violated in this instance, but there's a cost-benefit analysis that needs to be done. I mean, I'm not suggesting a formal cost-benefit analysis, but we need to think in our own minds what the cost is going to be if this homeowner is going to be required to change this. I don't think she should have to, and I don't think it's precedent setting either. And I'll make one final point. I don't think the staff characterization of the Secretary of the Interior's standard number 9, and that this violates it is correct, because the dormers that were on the building to begin with, before they were crushed, were hip dormers. And to differentiate them, you could say, they now have gable end dormers. And the second iteration that we're going to be considering tonight takes it back to gable dormers. Hip dormers. So that doesn't differentiate the old from the new. And I think that's a point that needed to be pointed out. And so, again, I believe that I don't support option 2. I support option 1, and I hope that we will have a vote on that at some point. And it'd be the first vote, because these two options obviously include each other.
I feel like I had all those notes and was going to say most of the same things. So you stole all my ideas. You know, to your point, you know, this neighborhood pursued this local historic designation, and you know, I don't think they pursued it to give all the power over to somebody or to a board to have very, very strict determination on what can't be done, especially when we have almost now a dozen letters from immediate neighbors saying this is not, we don't see this as an issue. I also disagree with the one conclusion that it's an overwhelming, it's a dominant feature of the house. Looking at those pictures, I don't agree with that. And also to your point, these are guidelines, and you know, we need to take that into consideration. This is not, you know, set in stone that we have to follow this. I wanted to ask staff, and I wanted to ask you, was there any final determination on how we got from what was approved to what was built?
So basically what we ended up doing is that, as we kind of mentioned with the timeline, when we were notified that the project was completed and John went out and did his inspection, we kind of saw the discrepancy. We then talked to inspection services and zoning to just kind of make sure that, are we seeing the same thing that you're seeing? And we went through all of the plans that have been submitted, changes that have been made, and we've had many discussions to just kind of make sure, how did we get to this point? And even with the changes that have been put to the truss system, everything that ended up happening on the interior, everything in the plans that were submitted in Permit Arlington, which is the system that we use to do these reviews, no changes were made to that elevation, nothing to the exterior. So to understand what happened, the disconnect between what got built and what is put into the plans, we don't have that answer, because everything that we're seeing that was submitted to us and what we're supposed to go off with the design doesn't match what was built. And that's really kind of the key.
were the on-site inspectors, were they, was this discussed with them?
So with inspections.
There's a lot, you know, I mean, all the time, you know, on-site inspectors will make a call on-site and say, you know, we need to change this or that. And it's not in writing anywhere. But, you know, they will require it and they'll come back and make sure it got done.
So we talked to inspection services and brought that up as well. And they had done their inspections, but the key thing to kind of know is that when it's looking at the design that's submitted, they aren't going off of that. The field inspectors, when they go out and they're checking things like mechanical, utility systems, drywall, those types of things, thank you. They are looking at, they're comparing it to what is the building code to make sure that it's safe, as well as any type of fire inspections they need to do. And they're not doing it off of comparison.
Well, then the follow-up question was the design that was approved up to building code?
The design that was approved by the HLRB, that building code, and everything that was submitted in the plans, everything that was submitted could have, we asked ISD, they said that could have been built without making changes to the elevation.
The trust system that got approved.
I'd like to ask you folks if you have any insight on how it got from what was approved to what was actually built.
Do you want me to address it? I kind of know because I've heard our story told to so many DRC meetings. So we had to have multiple bids from multiple trust companies. My house is in circa 1915, probably 1911 or 1912. And it was just difficult to find people who are willing to do structural. I had structural work damage all the way down to the first floor. So I had to figure out a framing system that was going to work with a home that had tree structural damage. And we got multiple quotes, and somewhere in the quote that finally made sense to us, it was the fourth quote we went with. And somewhere in that, the height and the pitch and everything was correct, but the dormers were positioned differently. And they're a little higher up on the roof line and they're a little higher in elevation. And again, under a foot for both of those issues. So it was in that fourth truss design. And, you know, Mike and I just didn't communicate. There was a lot of other stuff going on while we're doing that.
And I understand that. Our house was a large oak from a neighbor fell on our house in 2020, devastating damage. I know how hard it is. I understand how difficult the insurance process is, and how, you know, it's so hard. And so I understand it's a
Like
huge
a
project.
divorce or a death or something.
Did anybody from county staff ever say, you know, you need to go in and get the plans modified?
No, so this was interesting to us. We would pass through all the county permitting process, and we also would see historic doing drive-bys. And again, all of the exterior work was completed in December of 2024. And so, you know, that we just understood it to be passing permit. The guy driving by doesn't stop to write us up or anything. We understood that to be complete. So then, and we misunderstood, but that's what we understood.
I really appreciate what Dick said, because it is a bigger problem than in just one house and a few inches sharing a ridge line even. I think you summed it up really well when you talked about that communication breakdown and why that's essential, that mutual trust between the neighbors and what we're doing here. And that's why I really want to commend you for just being so responsive, especially in something that's incredibly traumatic after 2 years and having to come back. I acknowledge that completely. But it also comes down to communication. And I realize that you said, Dick, not to point fingers, but, and it's not, these are guidelines, but there is an understanding that as a design professional, when I look at drawings, that's a form of communication. And I want to make sure that what I'm seeing is what's being built. And when something gets played real fast and loose, it's hard to trust that there's a mutual appreciation of this process. And I would also say that you being here so many times, bring your contractor, your architect, sorry, really does suggest that there is a value here. You've done this before, I understand, but I'm looking at this amended design. The gable that's proposed is off center, but in the plan it's centered. I don't know if that's sloppy or it's disingenuous. And so when I see these things, to Dick's point, in order to do this in the future, we do have to look at how are we maintaining communication so there's an appreciation of this process, because we don't want to burn bridges. We want through the DRC to give good advice so people can build things to make things livable, but also trust that when architects or design professionals are bringing something to the table, that we can trust that they have the right design intentions as well. And to me, this amended design is not in good faith because there's no way you can build that. Or which one should I trust, the elevation or the plan? So it does suggest that there's a breakdown in the communication that is project specific.
I think,
And I'm not to harp too much again on the whole trust issue, but the change in the trust, was that flagged in any of the building?
He submitted the trust
Foundation?
drawing and
Yeah.
it was approved.
Okay, so the revised trust, or
The revised trust drawing,
Right.
because we
Okay.
couldn't do what we were supposed to do.
Okay.
With the years and stuff before, we got it approved.
That was approved,
With
okay.
the heights and everything.
Oh, okay.
Exactly what you
I
said there.
didn't, okay.
My question with that, knowing that there is the historic aspect to this and that it did require HALRB approval for the first round of the COA, that there is scrutiny of the exterior and there are standards. And I understand the question of guidelines, but what I'm trying to understand, given the timeline, is that there is the discrepancy of the height. But to me, the ridge line of the roof and the dormer is not meeting. Like, if we would have increased everything 9 inches, the dormer height would still be below that. And so, to me, the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9 is where we're differentiating old versus new. And I think one of the basics of that is roof lines, where when they are all at the same height, it appears to have been built at the same time. And so when it is offset, that also is a distinguishing factor. And so I think, granted, knowing that 2 of them, the north and the east, were reconstructed and they were original, but especially the west being new, I don't think that that is something that does fall within the guidelines. And I echo a lot of what Robert said with DRC. I think that there was a lot of internal review, both at the DRC, the HALRB, the staff level, but also in construction, there should be submittals and drawings. And if the roof framer isn't able to do it, that's a conversation that's had with the architect. And I, again, echoing what Dick said, I don't think that the homeowner was aware. And so I think that this is a very challenging position to be in, because I'm sympathetic to all of that and the position she's in and understanding how the neighborhood feels. But at the end of the day, this is precedent setting, and how many people are going to come to us after and say, you approved it, we knew how to get it approved, but we built something different, and it will be this challenge to do it. So if we do a non-precedent setting retroactive approval, and I think that that to me is the challenge of, do we want to set that precedent?
I think we can look at this case a couple different ways, and it was occasioned by something that was totally unexpected. And yeah, I mean, I walked by the house and I looked at it and I thought, did we approve that? That was my first reaction. And then I guess, I didn't go back and look at the plan. So, I'm not an architect, but I looked at historic structures for a long time. And I think it is noticeable, perhaps not to the people across the street who don't have a historic preservation background. But on the other hand, there's just a lot of troubling factors here, and I don't think it's necessarily a precedent-setting case. I think we can distinguish it from other situations in which people are not dealing with a destroyed house and they're putting it back together. And through what seems to be a series of errors, unforced or whatever, this is where we are. I know that we don't take into account the amount of cost of historic preservation structures. That's not a part of our charge, but there are times when perhaps we ought to look at the process from a little bit different way. I think I associate myself with some of Dick's comments. Just feeling not sure that the revised structures are necessarily better.
To your point, Joan, I haven't heard yet anything convincing on how this was missed. And I'm not sure we should be putting that
Well,
on.
I don't know. It happened, and as one of my former law colleagues used to say, we don't need to go through the who struck Fred bit a bit.
I mean, I don't think the burden should be on the homeowner to make these changes
I
because.
mean, we are where we are. And in an ideal world, yes, it should be put back to what was approved. Can we come up with a solution that will honor the historic building and still be an acceptable interpretation of the guidelines and work with what's there?
I agree with you, Joan. That's a good point, and that maybe that's the focus. Okay, still go back to the fact that it's not staff's job to catch something. There is an understanding that there's a responsibility when you submit something that you're going to follow through, and when it's stamped, but this is a retroactive COA. I understand. So to your point, Dick, how do we feel about the gable massing? Is it appropriate? The option 1 or 2? Do we like 1?
From an architectural standpoint, I'm not really qualified to say. That's not my role. As not.
You're a neighbor. Do you remember the community?
Well, to my personal opinion. What was your question again about?
I think it's to the board in general. If we're going to focus not on punishing anyone, that's not the goal here. And earlier we talked about how do we reestablish good communication? It's a separate issue. But if we're looking at the gables and we need to decide between option 1 or 2, can we live with option 1? Do we think it's compatible as it's built, a compatible solution?
Well, that's an interesting question because if you look at some of the additions in Maywood, you would say absolutely. There's some wild stuff there. And, and I'll freely admit a lot of it was built before the historic district did. But if you ask the question the way you presented it, it would fit right in. And,
The pictures were really compelling, actually. Yeah.
And I don't, I agree with Joan. I think it's a one-off. And I think it's partially, again, I agree with Joan about it being partially caused by the circumstances that created the need for a project, the tree falling down, and sort of chaos of it. But I also think there is some truth to the allegations. I don't know how much truth, that there were questions about meeting code for ingress and egress and meeting code for insulation. And I don't know how to interpret that or what that means, in terms of the building that's constructed. There are questions about how it is that no one noticed that this was built until it was built. And then expecting the homeowner to somehow be, tagged with it being her problem. And I don't know. So
many of these were done before the local historic district.
Yes, that is.
Yeah. And so I guess let's not make perfect be the enemy of the good. We've got a good thing going in Maywood. And let's not turn the neighborhood against the historic district. And get our neighbors fighting with each other. I mean, come on. What we ought to be doing is figuring out how we can get into Ashland Heights, Cherrydale, Lion Village, and Lion Park, and figuring out how they can become historic districts.
Well, I also
And
think that
taking the example
we
of what
need to-
happens in Maywood to them.
work on making the county be more appreciative of what this staff does. And when you have a historic house, and we have a lot of individual historic houses, not just the neighborhoods, that they really need to check with the staff when there are inspections. And just, so that's an issue. The county's got issues too. It's not, I don't want to point fingers.
I'm gonna jump in really quick. I am also swayed by the neighbors' support, and I don't think the as-built design is much different from the amended design. But what I'm really concerned about, to be honest, is that we approved the COA and it was not followed. And what are we supposed to do as the board that's supposed to enforce these COAs? If we don't do that. So let me finish my sentence with that. So I just want everyone to consider that part of it. And I totally agree. I would love for there to be more historic districts, but we are also tasked with enforcing the guidelines. And if we're not going to enforce the guidelines, then why have the historic district in the first place? So I'm really torn. I totally understand your point of view, and I understand the neighbors. But I also think that the COA was not followed, and it's kind of coming to light maybe that the elevations weren't submitted when interior designs were submitted, maybe. But we don't know exactly what happened, and that's not really our decision, what we're going to determine here. But I just wanted to throw that out there, that I think that's not an insignificant part of this, is that there was a COA that was approved and it wasn't followed. And if we're not going to follow them, then I don't know what.
Well, can we modify the COA that was approved retroactively?
We can, sure. Yeah, that's on the agenda for tonight.
Right, but it's not A or B. It's, can we
that would
modify the
be,
original COA to approve the original design?
right now, at tonight's meeting, I think our only options are as built or the amended, or I guess it would have to be like tabled if there was a third option.
The original approved design is, why would we have to prove that? It's already been approved.
But what was built does not conform to the original design, so we would have to modify the COA to conform to what was built.
Right, that's what's at stake.
That's-
Then I do take the whole.
All right, so from what you said, I thought that was not.
No, I'm sorry if I confused that now. The design one is the as-built plans,
Okay.
right?
And that would be the modified.
That would then be,
Okay.
Oh, okay.
but I'm saying, the original
Yeah,
COA
okay.
was not followed.
But
And
I
what do
think
we
that
do?
there are extenuating
doesn't follow.
circumstances, and I think a motion could make clear that, given the extenuating circumstances of this case, should we choose to modify the COA to design one?
Right. And I think that's a good point. And if, people are thinking about that, I think, like what are the extenuating circumstances?
I think they've been discussed. The circumstances that the homeowner found herself in with the damage. The challenges with communication. County approval that seemed to indicate that everything was acceptable, when in fact it wasn't.
I just want to, again, just make clear that in talking about the inspections, and the building permit did get approved. And that did have the COA plans, the original COA plans that the HLRB, that was in there, that was in that submittal. And the building permit, which went through changes, that got approved, the building permit got approved. And then when the inspection services went out to do their final building inspection, I just want to make it clear that they don't see anything with the design. They don't see anything with what the COA has. They don't see anything that the building permit states.
I think that's probably one of the miscommunications because that maybe the homeowner didn't clearly understand that it was just the state code that was being verified.
Yeah, that was exactly my question, because my neighbor I'm on this part of 22nd, she's on the other part of 22nd, but she's an architect and she went through a massive redo like 2-3 years ago with you guys. And she's also an architect, and I told her my understanding is that historic has to, anything that's in the historic district, historic also signs off when the permit is closed. There's like a little box for the inspector to check that he's checked with historic, that it's within compliance. And that was her understanding too. And that was my understanding, is when the county signed off on the permit, they had seen my house as in historic, and there had been some kind of historic check the box. It's in the historic zone. Historic's been reviewed. That was my understanding. And that was her understanding. And she's an architect who's also gone through this process in Maywood on my street. So I'm not alone. And that's why there's like a huge groundswell of support. Dick is right. It's like, I've gone through the neighborhood. People stop at me and when I'm putting out my trash, or they're walking their dogs or their babies, and they stop. No person has said your house is offensive. And so, but I'm just telling you, that was my understanding of the permit historic relationship. And it was a misunderstanding.
I'm inclined to accept as built, just for all of the reasons suggested. But I do think that what's happened here is a problem. And whether it's a problem that points out a bigger issue that we clearly need to deal with. I've never filed for a renovation or construction permit in Maywood, so I've not seen the check boxes. But I'm curious, because the architect is here and so you can answer some questions. You filed for the permit and I've only seen scans of it, and it did have a little red stamp on it that said that it was permitted and that if anything needs to be changed, it needs to be addressed here. Were you unaware of that?
We're aware of everything, and we submitted the trust drawing to reflect all of that. But when we got to.
We don't look at trusts here.
This let me clarify what I'm saying before you jump to conclusions. I said, when we submitted the project, he had a certain criteria. It had to meet installation value, it had to meet all that. You had to adjust the building to fit all that. So there's no way that you guys could have known whatever. We had the thing lower, but they said it couldn't be built that way. So how else were we gonna do it?
But I think the question is that if there were interior changes that necessitated exterior changes, why were those exterior changes not included in the permitting? And also, why did you not come back to the HALRB to have that amended before moving forward with construction? I think that's your question.
Is
If there's
there
something that was unclear, then maybe we need to add that to the process.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there a county process for changes to the plans that, and who has to approach HLRB? Is that the applicant, or should permitting inspections be telling staff and the board that there are changes?
So for permits that involve exterior and that are in local historic districts, our office is assigned review. So when we look at them, we look to make sure that they match the stamped plans. There are certain interior reviews that we are not privy to because it's not under our jurisdiction.
I think these interior changes, seems like they changed the heights, which affected the exterior.
Go ahead. So
I'm trying to understand.
sure, no, and that is a that is the questions that we've been asking too, because the change that you ended up submitting, there were some reviews that we weren't involved in, but that's because it was all interior changes and nothing changed on the outside, which is why we weren't involved in those aspects. And if there had been, we then would have been included. And also, if who can't lose a train of thought?
But didn't the interior changes change the heights?
The interior changes, from what we've been told, did not change the plant, the elevations, and did not change the way that the dormers were approved by the HLRB. They weren't.
We were told that the truss system that was approved could have been built to comply with the exterior.
Okay, so that I'm just trying to, I guess my question is who then approved? And I know I think I know the answer. I mean, the inspectors do this all the time on site and there's no documentation.
Talk to ISD about that, because that was kind of, I'll be honest, that is something new to me, that if they're on site, can they make some changes or say it's okay? What we understand, what ISD has told us, that there can be minor, but if there would have been anything changes to the outside appearance, that would have been flagged and we would have been.
From experience, I disagree.
We're all recognized.
Yeah,
Everybody has had different-
I would say it's about 50-50. And normally it's never an issue. No one ever brings it up, right? And I think this is the case because it has this added aspect of being historic that it's now becoming an issue. But I think the on-site inspectors have a lot of leeway on what they can and can't approve, and maybe, and a lot of times I think they take it to extremes, where things should go back for plan changes, but they just let it slide.
I would just
Go ahead.
one thing. I want to also just add so that everybody is aware that when we issue the stamped plan, so after the HALRB meetings, when I stamp our plans and send them to the applicant and approve them in Permit Arlington, we also include a letter, and that letter explicitly states, if you have any revisions that occur to this project, you have to come back. So it's made very clear from the beginning of the process from our office that if there are changes that are necessitated by other conversations that happen with other county staffing, that it's their responsibility to come back and have those changes reviewed by the HALRB. So I just want to make that clear that that is communicated.
And I'd like to add to that, which is we have seen a lot of situations where people come back. They've had to move a window. They had a change in material. They did a thing. They come back to us and we review it, and we usually say, oh, okay. Or if we find that the change doesn't meet the guidelines, we say, well, maybe you could move the window over a little bit, then it'll work. We're good with that. And we try very hard to work with applicants on these things, but it is, as Michael's saying, it remains the responsibility of the applicant to come back to us if there are changes that from the approved COA drawings. And that apparently didn't happen in this case.
The other thing, and I know right now we're looking at what was built versus this amended design, and I think it would be interesting to put what was approved with it too, because I think this is so far beyond a minor thing that an inspector would change, because this isn't, we raised it a foot to make insulation work. That I think, and Michael said it in the staff report, the minor height adjustment could be allowable and we can work with it, but it was the increase of the entire height of the dormer. And so I think that's all part of the change too. And it's a communication thing. And again, I don't think this is the homeowner. I think this is why you hire design professionals to review all of this. You have the county board to review it. There's a process in place. And I think that, yes, there was a communication failure, but somewhere along the way, that's also why everyone has insurance. And again, not the homeowner, but I think that there is just a discrepancy that occurred and it didn't make its way back to us, but there is a design professional responsible as well for knowing how the process works. And I think that for me is where it is challenging.
When I started review, I just looked at the paperwork this afternoon and I started, actually, because yesterday I started with the letters from the neighbors and, reading and then I went to the paperwork this afternoon and, I was inclined to think that this was minor and I would go along with it. And then I looked at the drawings and I couldn't believe that, we were talking about the same project here. I couldn't see how how this could have happened, okay, because the what was approved and what was built were so disparate. And we have this happens all the time. Sometimes with projects, people will come back 3 or 4 times with interim amendments to the COA. I mean, I think you may have even done this before.
I have done it with you.
Okay, and so I just couldn't understand how this could have been built that way, and how this could be a surprise to anybody. To me, we should. There's a process here, and people have to respect the process. And we've had other times when it's been some of these retroactive cases are very, very difficult. And a couple of people have said that the homeowner shouldn't have to bear the responsibility. Well, that's really not our decision to make. Okay, that's really between the homeowner and the architect or the builder. I mean, we shouldn't be the ones necessarily, pointing fingers, but I mean, it happened, and it's somebody else's decisions to figure out who's financially responsible for this. It may not, perhaps the owner shouldn't have to pay, but that's not our decision to make. That's somebody else's.
I think there's more than just financial, it's a major inconvenience, and there's a question of whether the county would let her stay in the small duties.
Well, I don't disagree with you there. There's some misunderstanding certainly, but you can't sue the county. Okay. So that's the system that we live under. So if the county made mistakes here, then so under the system we live under generally, unless you can prove gross negligence or something like that.
Well, you can actually appeal to the county.
Pardon?
You can appeal to the county board.
You could appeal to the county board. That's true. That's true. But
It's been done.
again, that's not our domain to make that decision. If the applicant wants to appeal to the county board, she's welcome to do that, I think, under the system that we have.
Did Andrew or Omari, do you have anything to add?
I was just gonna ask if you could pull up the originally,
Yeah.
It's been talking long enough that I'm forgetting.
Another point I wanted to make is the DRC actually did make major concessions in agreeing to this number 2. Number 2 is not what was originally approved. So I think the DRC been a long way to try to compromise and have a solution that people could live with without insisting that, everything get torn down and be built the way it was originally approved.
That's what you wanted, right, Andrew?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just echo what Jerry and Rebecca said. I mean, it's vastly different. I mean, I'm sympathetic to everything I've heard tonight, and I'm not, but I would just like to go on the record to say it's vastly different between what's there and what's been built. I mean, and again, there was some breakdown somewhere, communication, and I mean, I don't know. I just wanted to go on record and say that. I mean, I think there are other circumstances that are probably maybe even outside sort of those very concrete factors here, but it's very different. It's striking.
Have anything else to add? I a motion I could suggest, or someone else is
Before you, can I suggest that after we vote, that we have a follow-up discussion about, outside of this project, but in general, how we might improve the process, in terms of, say, inspections and so forth. So we don't have to make it part of this, but we've already talked about it a lot, but I feel like it's something we need to talk a little bit more about. And see what we can do so that things like this don't happen again.
Yes, I think we definitely can, and I think that also could be something we discuss further, which you talked about. Okay.
Oh, I was gonna say, I would suggest that we have two separate motions, because I think there's disagreement here. One is to approve design one, and one is to approve design, if that doesn't get approved, design two.
Yes, so I think first we're gonna have built drawings. And I have drafted something, if people want to hear it, maybe give me their thoughts. And
Can I make one final statement? Sure. Those dormers have been up for a year. We're 1 year after dormer completion, and I'm hearing you now. And I only heard from you 2 or 3 months ago. They've been up for 1 year. Okay, just reminding everybody.
thank you for coming and being a part of this process. Okay. So this is the motion on design number 1, and this is what I'm going with. I move that the HLRB approve design number 1 proposal for COA 24-13A at 2904 22nd Street North in the Maywood Local Historic District because of the following extenuating circumstances. The nature and extent of the damage from the storm to the historic structure. Confusion surrounding the county approvals for the project. The applicant's willingness to work with historic preservation staff on this project. And the fact that all contiguous neighbors support the proposal's roof and dormers as not having a visual negative impact on the neighborhood character.
A second.
Does anyone want to maybe suggest changes?
You want an amendment that says something about that this is precedent setting?
I mean, we can say that. I feel like we can't say that something's not precedent.
Well, you preface your conditions. that-
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going.
Extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, sure.
I just want to have Michael point something out, because we do a lot of research when we're preparing for this, for any discussion. We look at previous projects. And I'm concerned with us saying that in the motion, that this isn't setting a precedent, because we have done that in the past for something similar to this. Like, can you explain if you're willing to hear it?
No one else wants it.
The only thing that we could say is we don't intend this to be precedential, but
Well, yeah.
you know, that's just kind of self-serving. Somebody will take a look at this, and we need to put facts in here. If we don't think it's going to be precedent setting, we have to put facts in the motion to distinguish this from something else.
Is what I was trying.
Rather than just
Right.
Long list of extenuating circumstances.
Right, yeah.
I'm happy to throw the word not precedent setting in there. I personally think when you make a decision, it sets a certain precedent.
I'm not asking you to do that. I just thought I was responding
Yeah.
to comments around the table.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do people like that addition, that we don't intend this to set a precedent?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that's one thing you could.
Well, everyone will have to vote yes or no on this motion, so.
We're taking out, I don't know if it altered, the extenuating circumstances, including the tree. I don't think that's a qualifying extenuating circumstance.
I think that
The only reason I did include that is to be honest, I do think what I'm hearing about the extent of the damage is that she did rebuild her historic home. And I think
extent of damage.
the extent of the damage.
this was not a renovation by choice.
Right,
It's out of necessity.
yeah, and it
Okay.
maybe could have actually,
Or torn down.
yeah, that's
All right,
right,
that's good. Just one.
yeah.
And I requested you read that again.
Yes,
we've
but I
asked-
didn't write, I was,
And John, maybe you can help with some of it, maybe not all of it. It's John's writing this down. Yeah, I want to make sure he captures it.
okay. And does anyone feel strongly about the precedent? Adding?
I'm not crazy about the neighbors portion. I don't know. I mean, because, I mean, people can have their opinions, but they're not, I mean, I don't think it's
Yeah.
extenuating. I don't think it should be in there first.
And
I agree with him.
And
Marty.
I agree with that
actually-
too.
Yeah.
That actually goes to precedent because it's really, we are the board that decides this issue, not the neighbors.
Yeah,
Otherwise, what is the point of this board if we're gonna take a vote of the neighbors? I mean, I appreciate that the neighbors are part of the community. They love the community. They care about it. They have opinions. That's all great. But we're the board that makes this decision. That's been empowered by the state and the county. And so I don't think that that's an extenuating circumstance. I mean, I, on the other hand, I do get that the people who live in the neighborhood are okay with it. They're not. So I see where you're coming from. I think
Yeah.
I agree with Amari.
I think, to be frank, I mean, I think that is an extenuating circumstance for me, because if we had a lot of neighbors that were not happy about this project, and did think it was not within the historic character in the neighborhood that they live in and that they're most affected by, then I might have felt it. So,
I'll say that, in our neighborhood, we have what they used to call zoning variances. And what zoning does is they go and they tell you to get letters from your neighbors, and which I really think is, I mean, I've been involved in a couple of these, and I think it really kind of is disruptive to the neighborhoods. It's neighbor against neighbor because you're trying to figure out whether you should sign this letter and, that type of thing. And I just don't think the way Arlington County does that is very good. I mean, you can have people, because if you have people that are against it and people are for it, they're collecting letters from, I've engaged in some of this myself, and I think it's very disruptive to the neighborhood to have, try to get people that are against this, especially because they don't want to have bad relations with the neighbors afterwards. So I just think
I don't think that's what we're talking about here.
No, we're not, but
I think we're talking about a situation where all the neighbors are happy about it. And everybody has to live in that neighborhood together. And that makes, I think that's a point we're making, because the neighbors could very well decide that they all didn't want to be in an historic district anymore because of whatever could happen. And, the neighbors are important. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a neighborhood.
Yeah, but,
Neighbors who live there. If the neighbors like it, that's a factor that ought to be considered.
people write these letters just to maintain good relations with their neighbors.
Oh, that's a cynical.
I think I do think that maybe someone, and we're kind of going away, but someone might just stay silent just to, make things good with their neighbors, but this is all of the contiguous neighbors wrote letters and support.
And some of these are really detailed, well thought
I
out.
think that if we had a lot of, homeowners that just said nothing, I think that would be a little different. And I do understand that, you don't want to say something negative, but I think this is the reason I mentioned it, and the reason I do want to keep it in motion, because I probably wouldn't make the motion myself. So
Could you read the phrase again, please?
Yeah.
The neighborhood.
let Michael
Make a
maybe
point
make a.
really quickly. So I just, if that is part of the logic and reasoning behind this decision, I think you all need to be comfortable with, just as, board, comfortable with utilizing that as influence for decisions in the future, which I think is Robert and Amari's point, where you have to be comfortable with being against or really for something. And so what if somebody wants to build a rear addition that you all really don't find compliant with the design guidelines? The entire all the neighbors in the neighborhood really support it. I think that's just something for everybody to consider.
Why do we take public comment? consider what people are saying.
That's a good point. I'm just
Yeah,
pointing
yeah.
out that
No, I,
there's a future thinking about the logic being
and I,
for this decision will have implications for future decisions.
Well, I think it's, I mean, the neighbors are considered in our decision, but I don't think they need to be in the necessarily in the actual motion. That's my part of it. I mean, I appreciate actually all neighbors, I guess, being in favor of it. And that should weigh on how we sort of judge it. But as far as it being in the motion, I think it'd be left out. But either way, I mean, that's my 2 cents. Either way, though.
One of my neighbors is the Maywood Community Association president. He's 3 doors down from me. That's one of.
I just want to interject. He wrote his letter and
It's a
specifically
personal.
said that it was personal. not with respect to the
But I want to say he is the president of the association.
But I would say, and Kamari, I think you captured it exactly as Robert did. We hear neighbors and public speakers at every discussion item, but it's never been mentioned in the motion. And so I think that, I don't want it to be a thing where everyone is for it and we're against it, but they outnumber us. So
I think this is a slightly different situation because it's after the fact. It's not a COA that's coming to us as the beginning stages of the process. In those situations, I don't think we ever have taken the neighbors' views into consideration particularly. But on this one, where the neighbors can actually see what's been built and don't have a problem with it, I think it's worth mentioning. I think it bolsters the support for the district in the neighborhood.
I think to me, the extenuating circumstances are actually a detraction because the only thing you said in the summary is the option compatible with the neighborhood and do we, as the board, find it acceptable? And we're on the DRC, we didn't. We made some arrangements to meet in the middle, but the fact that the neighbors do find it compatible and are comfortable, I think we can take that into consideration. I almost want to, doesn't create precedent, I understand, but adding all the extenuating circumstances does shape the way we're going to look at things in the future. The only thing that makes sense to me is evaluating it based off design and how the neighborhood comes together. If the neighbors like it, let's consider that, and that's
That's
it.
a great point. If we're gonna go against the opinions of our distinguished architects on the board, we ought to have a good reason.
And to me, that's the only thing. So to me, I kind of want to take the tree out. I want to take everything else up, say, all right, we found through functional research and your due diligence that this is compatible based off of the conversation and situation. I know it's dicey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I made the motion that I made because I guess I am willing to approve based on those circumstances. And if those aren't in there, I don't really approve just based on compatibility. So that's why I made the motion that I made.
Well, something to also keep in mind, as we all know, this is a recorded meeting. We have minutes. When we were doing all of our background research on other projects that you approved for different reasons, some retroactive, we went back and looked at those minutes. So there is something to keep in mind that even if it maybe isn't included in the motion, it's in the discussion and that is there, it's on the record. So it lets you know, because we could have a whole new HLRB in a couple of years and they want to have a good understanding on why the decision was made the way it was. That's in there, that's on the record. So just kind of put that.
I mean, one thing I could do is make just a very clean motion that I approve. Or maybe someone could move to approve the design, period. I think listing the reasoning gives future board members and future community members reasons why things might be approved and might not be.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's
For reasons.
To make your life, your job easy.
In that case, I gotta add the community. Another reason.
I appreciate your perspective though. Okay, I think I'm gonna read my motion. Okay.
If you could just
laws attribute circumstances.
Oh. I move that the HLRB approve design number 1 proposal for COA 24-13A at 2904 22nd Street North. Historic District. Because of the following extenuating circumstances. The nature and extent of the damage from the storm. Confusion surrounding the county approvals for the project. The applicant's willingness to work with staff in good faith. And that all contiguous neighbors support the proposal's roof and dormers as not having visual negative impact. Yeah, the last one is that all contiguous neighbors support the proposal's roof and dormers as not having a visual negative impact on the neighborhood character. And if people don't like this, that's, you can change it.
I second. Oh.
So,
A second. Please call me.
all right, please respond yes if you support the motion. Nathan Burlingame,
Yes.
Amari Davis,
Yes.
Robert Dyke,
Stay.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster. Yes. Jerry Laporte,
No.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Becca Meyer,
No.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
and Dick Woodruff.
Yes.
Is Andy, are you online? Can you say yes or no?
Yes.
You say yes?
Yes.
Thank you. The yeses are 8. The noes are 2. The motion passes. Carries, thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you for coming and talking to us.
I'm gonna be in my house at Christmas with my children. They're coming home from college, so thank you. Thank you. After 2
Merry
years,
Christmas.
we haven't been in our house since December of 2022. Thank you.
Okay. We are going to move on.
Before we.
Oh, yes,
Can
we
I make-
did want to.
Well, we don't have to have the discussion in depth right now, but I wanted to make a suggestion, which is that perhaps staff at framing, maybe if the county can at least give notice to historic preservation staff that the framing has been done, and they've given the approval for framing. That at that point, staff goes and inspects, because I think that way we head off some of these things.
I have a question.
Maybe
Just-
inspection goes beyond just street.
Yeah, does staff have the right to enter a property, obviously with notice to
Yeah.
inspect?
We,
I'm just curious.
yes, we do have the ability to enter a property
Okay.
and to inspect a project. Obviously, we really don't do interior because that's not,
Yeah.
that's not what we're looking at. But yes, John can access the properties.
Just curious.
So I appreciate everyone making those suggestions, and we are just evaluating how we do our project management when it's coming to our certificates of effectiveness projects, as well as working with ISD to see if there's a possibility of us having a final checkoff similar to how ISD goes out and does their final inspection. And also, I think some of the things that Leslie pointed out with the confusion that property owners have had with what it means when they see us going through the neighborhood. What does it mean when an inspector comes out and says, you're approved? What does it mean when the HLRB stamp is on plan? All of those things, we recognize that it would probably be a benefit for us to go to the Maywood Civic Association in 2026 Not gonna promise January. We have a lot going on in the next couple of months. But I've already spoken with the Civic Association president about going to have a talk with the community about these things, because I think everybody sees it very daunting going through the process. Here's different projects and experiences. And so we want to be helpful. We want to be a resource. We want to show, call us if you have questions, those types of things. So we recognize that's another way that we can do outreach to talk about how things are going. And so there are different things we're considering. Yes,
I would volunteer to go with you.
I appreciate that, because you know what? I think it would be good to have an HLRB member there, maybe Joan.
Kind of rats it out on the front too.
So I think that that would be really good. I think that, so we have many opportunities.
I'll go. I'll go if you want me to.
That's very wonderful.
Happy to do.
So we're considering what our options are, because we recognize we have our process, we have our standards, we have our recommendations we make to you. And we try and stick to, we follow those design guidelines because that's our job. That's what we're trying to do. So we want to make sure that if there are areas where things can be done differently, we're looking into that, because we'd like to not have these projects come and have these really tough decisions, because recognize this was very challenging, very tough. There were so many things that were talked about. It was a very, very thoughtful discussion. So we're taking that under advisement.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Okay, and yes, we could definitely. Okay. We are gonna move on.
I just want to let you know, we're done with your project.
Yes.
We're done with your project. So if you all would like to,
So you found no violation, so there's nothing we need to do, right?
with the HLRB, because of the approval of what was built. That's it.
Oh,
Wow.
wait, is that true? Like, there still was a violation. There was a permit that wasn't followed, but it's been retroactively accepted, right?
I think we should probably have some conversations about whether or not updated permit sheets need to be submitted.
That is something that you'll have to work out with ISD, because the thing is that from what I understand the process, you would need to submit what was built in order for them to officially approve it. And from the discussions that we've had, what was built going off of not what was in the HLRB COA approval, they can't approve that. So that's something we should connect you with, so
Talk
that
to
you
you
go through
about
that
it
process.
later, about who I need to talk to.
Yeah. But right now, no, there's no
Is it-
violation.
It's a fact that no violations ever.
Technically, we did not issue a violation, but the reason we came to have this discussion is because it did not match our permit.
Right.
And so that's a violation. But nothing, but
But
no
the COA.
ticket. Yeah, thank you. There's no ticket. There's no fine at this point. There's nothing like that. So, but I do think we do need to have a couple more conversations just to make sure that you have a permit that shows.
That was what's built.
So we'll
Talk about it,
We should talk about it further.
because I want it to be closed.
Yeah,
No.
you probably will.
Yeah.
That's not a thing.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
So,
Thank you.
but I just want to make sure I didn't want you all, it's late, so I want you all to.
They have to draw it as built now. Thank you.
All right. No, you're fine. Okay, the only thing I have on my chair
Oh, we got something.
report is, the elections for the 2020 HLRB leadership. And, I know who Dick, Omari and Robert.
Okay, I'm gonna lead the discussion. I'm sure there's gonna be this. HLRB, should I just read the motion? We need to.
I think you have to report to the committee. You have to report to the committee,
Come on, Nick.
and then we can have a
You've done
motion.
this before.
The committee met virtually, sequentially, or simultaneously. But anyway, we came to a conclusion. And we are proud to say that we have confidence in the current leadership of the board and wish to extend both of their terms another year. So we need to debate that.
And it's fine.
Committee's report, then elect Yes.
Well, I think they might want to say some nice things about us.
But I don't want to not have my fellow committee members.
I mean, I think you've summed it up.
Summed it up. I'm the full concurrence and have all the confidence in the world in our leadership. And
Yes, it was unanimous. We felt very comfortable with this recommendation.
Especially after tonight.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Are you sure you don't want to change your mind?
I'm going to make a motion, if it be in order at this time. HALRB hereby adopts the recommendations of its nominating committee and elects Katie Myers as chairperson and Alex Foster as its vice chairperson for a one-year term beginning January 1st, 2026.
Second. Robert, second.
Please respond yes if you support the motion. Nathan Burlingame,
Yes.
Mari Davis.
yes.
Robert Dudka.
Yes.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster.
So you can vote, so people do it.
Or,
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Becca Meyer,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Andu Winchell,
Yes.
and Dick Woodruff.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, before Andy goes, I want to wish him a happy birthday. It's his birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Thank you for attending our meeting on your birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No kidding.
Okay, I'm set.
All right, we'll keep it brief. Friendly reminder, your financial disclosure forms are gonna be due on January 19th next year. We'll get the form the first week of January. It'll be in an email from DocuSign, so keep an eye out for it.
Populated or no?
I'm sorry. Make sure you save it this year.
I was gonna say.
We'll be able to reference back. So just keep an eye out for that. And then John, outreach
course.
update.
Yeah, short outreach update. So earlier this month, we had another meeting of the Arlington VA 250th Committee. Right now, the focus of the committee meetings is based pretty much entirely on event planning for the May 2026 Keystone event that is upcoming. So just logistical planning right now. There will be a second meeting held this week as well, tomorrow, that is Thursday. So we're going to continue to ramp up the number of meetings that we will be having. The only thing I would say to the people board is if you happen to be representing any other organizations, businesses, clubs, associations that are interested in taking part in the Keystone event in May of 2026, please reach out to Arlington Historical Society. So even if you're not participating in the committee meetings, you can still be looped into the larger event invitation. If your organization is already involved in the Virginia 250th planning, but you don't know what kind of presence you want to have at the Keystone event, if you're having difficulty thinking of fun programs, activities, way to engage with the community that is representative of Arlington 250th. You can also discuss that with Arlington Historical Society, or you can discuss that with me as the outreach coordinator. So happy to field any questions there.
Is there a date for Keystone event?
Right now, the Keystone event is currently scheduled for, I believe, May 9th, 2026.
May 9th?
Yes.
What will they be doing there? What are some of the things that will be happening?
So the event is still a work in progress right now. The larger plan is for it to be a celebration of Arlington history throughout the last 250 years, which is in keeping with the larger Virginia 250th celebration. It's not simply a celebration of 1776. It's a celebration of everything from then up until now. So the idea is to get as many businesses, organizations, civic associations involved and get people excited in Arlington history through a number of different facets. So this could be anything from, a table presence to a planned game or activity. I know there's always discussion of having a reenactor encampment, things like that. So nothing set in stone just yet, which is why the more ideas, the better.
I have one thought that you know, Arlington was part of Fairfax County in 1776. So is there any coordination with Fairfax County and Alexandria and Arlington? Because in 1776, they were all one jurisdiction. So any commemorative events should probably include all three.
That is a good catch. That would definitely be something to bring up at the next committee meeting. I would be happy to do that. Right now, the committee meetings that we are a part of is exclusively Arlington focused. So I'm not aware of conversations between Arlington Historical Society and say the 250th committees in Fairfax.
Yeah, but if they're going to focus just on Arlington in the past 250 years, then it's really sort of not a commemoration of what happened 250 years ago. It's just a celebration of everything that's happened since, I guess, just from what you described.
Yeah. So yeah, we can definitely reach out to Arlington Historical Society to see what conversations, if any, are happening with the other jurisdictions, and if not, see if we can't get some of those conversations. That's it.
Then I have one more update. It's about the Happiness Local Historic District. Very excited to say that the county board approved it this past Saturday. So that became our 44th local historic district. Gray is not here, but I did want to just say for the record that he spoke on behalf of the HALRB at the Planning Commission meeting, and he did a great job. So thank you, Gray, for participating in that. But we're very excited about the progress we made this year with our LHDQ. The first time in a while we've had 2 approvals of local historic districts in 1 year. So we're really looking forward to continuing that progress next year. So yeah.
Bravo to staff for that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And other than that, everybody's opinion on 2025 might be unclear, but we just want to say thank you very much for all of the work that you've done throughout the past 12 months. We really appreciate it. We know that you are giving your time to serve the county and the community. So just want to make sure that I say thank you, as well as an official happy holidays. And that is it for the stop.
Okay. And that's it for the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the cookie.
Cookies, Michael, do you want a lot left, or do you want?
Yeah.
Please take them.
We have
Bye,
enough.
Angie.
So many cookies.
Feel free to take any of the cups